Marhaba, shalom and welcome to the exciting podcast Israel Palestine Unpacked that is dedicated to exploring the complexities of the ongoing political situation between Palestinians and Israelis. Throughout this podcast, we will explore unresolved issues, the human cost and the diverse experiences and perspectives of those directly affected. These discussions demand sensitivity as the emotional weight of the topic cannot be overlooked. So far, we have focused primarily on the personal stories of individuals, their experiences, struggles and views, which provide valuable insights into how lived experiences shape perceptions. Moving forward, in the near future, I aim to engage with academics, historians, journalists and writers who have examined different dimensions of this complex political landscape. Additionally, we will highlight the significant contributions of peace organizations, both locally and globally, whose work fosters understanding and offers paths towards reconciliation. This podcast approaches the subject from an academic perspective, striving to unpack and better understand the issues at hand. I am not a journalist by trade, and my interviewing skills are continually developing. With each conversation, I aim to grow through self-awareness and constructive feedback. While I may occasionally miss opportunities to further explore claims or subjects, I view these moments as steps in a learning journey that I hope will make each episode more insightful. Finally, it is important to emphasize that all views expressed are those of the interviewees alone, and do not necessarily reflect the views of this podcast. On today's episode of Israel Palestine Unpacked, we speak with Shachar Erez, a licensed marriage and family therapist living and working in Israel. On good days, Shachar helps couples find their way back to each other, rediscovering connection, trust, and even falling in love again. Beyond his private practice, he trains other couples therapists and leads workshops and courses designed to help people navigate the complexities of love, communication, and conflict. But Shachar's work doesn't stop at the level of the individual or the couple. He is deeply interested in the phenomenon of polarization, not only within intimate relationships, but within and between societies. Living in a region marked by political, cultural and emotional divides, Shachar brings a unique lens to the interplay between personal healing and collective trauma. We hope this episode is both informative and enriching. And if you enjoy conversations like this, subscribe to stay updated as we continue exploring different narratives within this complex and deeply human conflict. In this moving and reflective conversation, we sit down with an Israeli trauma therapist who shares what daily life looks like now for him, his family, and the clients he supports. We explore the mental health challenges people are facing, from anxiety and burnout to the effects of intergenerational trauma. He speaks candidly about how he remains grounded while holding space for others' pain, and how a nation can begin to process grief when conflict remains ongoing. Together, we reflect on the growing polarization within Israeli and Palestinian societies and the world at large, and how this has shifted his understanding of human nature, liberalism, and the work of emotional healing. Despite the darkness, there are moments of light. He shares powerful stories of unexpected connection, resilience, and even hope. Not naive hope, but something quieter, more grounded, that emerges in the small spaces between fear and survival. This episode invites us to ask, what is missing from the global conversation? What does healing look like in the aftermath of war? And how might we begin to foster curiosity and nuance, even across the deepest divides? It's been a year and a half since the war began. How has daily life changed for you and your family?
Wow, it has changed tremendously. It's now a little bit better, but at the beginning it was very, very hard. I would say that generally speaking, we're dealing with a lot of fear and uncertainty. And also grief. A lot of grief. I think I was crying in this year 1,000 times more than I've cried in my whole life. So that's a lot to deal with. The daily life at the beginning of the war was very different. There were a lot of alarms and a lot of uncertainty that we had to deal with, and now it's mostly back to normal. But normal is change. We're not normal anymore. By the way, it's hard to remember what normal was. I think we're all more tense. You know, I hear a motorbike igniting, and I'm thinking, is this an alarm? Is this a missile? What's happening? Where are my kids? All these thoughts run through my head really quickly. So, yeah, even normal is not normal anymore.
You've spoken about the idea of reframing trauma to prevent a long-term damage, a long-term PTSD. For example, you're a trauma therapist.
As
Is that
well, yeah.
what are the biggest mental health challenges people are facing at the moment?
Yeah, I would say I'm trauma-informed therapist. I'm mainly a couples therapist. I work with couples the most. So I work with conflict and polarization all the time, not between Israelis and Palestinians, but between people, you know. So I have a lot to say about that as well. But to your question, I think what we're dealing with the most is, like I said earlier, the uncertainty. The uncertainty for humans, what it brings up is anxiety. So I said normal before, but actually our new normal is anxious, is more anxious than before. And this takes a toll on the nervous system and on our ability to contain life, to enjoy life, to be in a healthy relationship with other people. When people feel safe, we're open to relationship and we can be creative. When we're a little less than safe, we're anxious and we're more vigilant, hyper vigilant. So that's a lot of what we need to deal with. And this, I mean, people that weren't impacted with real trauma, weren't hurt themselves or first line kind of pain and injury. In a sense, we're all traumatized and we're still in it. It's not over yet. You know, we're doing this interview while Israel is going through this hostage deal. In the last 6 weeks, every week we get back a few live hostages or dead hostages. This is really hard to cope, to feel, and there's still so many hostages there. Even though I don't know them personally, that's really impacting me and many of us.
Yeah, I can fairly understand that. I met an Israeli girl in Belfast going back maybe 6 months ago, and we met up for a coffee to chat about possibly doing an interview. And as much as I understood the trauma that Israelis and Palestinians and other people from different conflict zones across the world have experienced, what struck me about it was that during the course of even just having a conversation, she herself had no experience, direct experience, I should say, of losing someone or someone being kidnapped or whatnot. Um, she just broke down into tears
Yeah,
because of the trauma, the sense of identity
yeah.
as
I,
an Israeli. Do
I
you,
just,
yeah,
I don't know if you saw that, but I just had to control my feelings when I was answering to you. I was thinking about Yarden, the father of Yarden, from the Bibas family. His wife was
yes, yes,
murdered, and the young children, or Eli Sharabi, who came back, and his wife and two children were murdered as well. That's, I'm a father myself.
yeah.
That that's so overwhelming, so overwhelming. How do you go on from that? That's really hard.
How do you like you mentioned just there that you had to hold yourself back. How do you as a therapist remain grounded
Yeah.
to you yourself personally for your own mental health? How do you remain grounded as you treat others, whether they have been directly or indirectly impacted as a consequence of the conflict, or even within a couple's setting, how do you ground yourself?
Yeah, that's a big challenge. And I work at it. I put a lot of focus on it because otherwise I'd be burnt out really quickly. So I work out and I meditate and I get supervision and I talk to colleagues and I spend time in nature and I let myself feel a lot. I let myself feel and I cry with my clients. Sometimes there was just a father here a couple of days ago and he was crying about what I just told you and I was crying with him and we were crying together in a therapy session. Um, yeah, I try to let myself feel and let the feelings go through me, not to so they don't get stuck. But it's a lot to hold. I feel like I've been sleeping more than ever. I need like an hour longer of a night's sleep than before this war started. It's hard.
Yeah. You mentioned that you work out. What do you mean by working out?
I work out, I exercise, I sweat. It's really important to sweat. I try to sweat 3, 4 times a
Yeah.
week.
I suppose that in a sense, like as someone who has noticed the benefits of exercise for myself, I do a lot of jump rope,
Yeah,
and when it comes to the mental health aspect of that, it's there's something about being human and about movement
right,
that is a very important concept.
right.
You talk about therapy and about trauma and about putting into practice a set of practices for each individual in order to offset or prevent long-term damage or
Right,
issues.
right.
In terms of a nation, how do Israelis on a national, on a cultural, and a social level, as well as Palestinians, go through a process where they can, as you mentioned, it's important to feel.
Yeah,
How do you go about that in order to grieve and so on?
yeah. Wow, that's a wide question. Israelis are pretty good on the community aspect. I used to live in America, which is probably the worst on that. We're not very individualistic, and we're good at connecting, and especially on times like that of war. So, for example, one of the hostages just came back and was interviewed on the television. And he was, even though he just went through all these horrors, he was very thankful for the good he's had in his life and for how people were taking care of him. And this was so giving me so much hope and power, and not just to me. I could. It became a conversation that many people saw the interview. Or another example, I went to hear someone that was there outside of Gaza on October 7th, and his family is okay, but they were under siege for like 35 hours. So to hear his story and to feel with him and talk to him, and it's quite horrific. It's not an easy story to hear. But something in that, it's important to feel to a degree, like not to drown in feelings, but to be able to feel and process it. And it's easier when it's done in a group, in a community. But this is something we'll have to deal with for years, for years. It's not a one-time deal. It's not a one-time story. There's a lot to process.
Yeah. You, Israeli and Palestinian societies, and I suppose the world at large, have become incredibly polarized.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the disease of our time, polarization.
Very much so. Very much so. Have your views on human nature changed in any way?
Hmm. Yeah. They were impacted for sure. I feel like I was very super liberal before the war, and I feel like now I'm post-liberal, and I'm not sure what that is yet.
Okay.
I realized jihad is a real thing. I realized, wow, this is so delicate. Let me see how I say that. So I realized jihad is a real thing and that there are people out there that want me dead just because I'm not on their with their faith. Not just me, not just Jews. Jihad, they kill the most Muslims, not Jews. You know, the war between Muslims is even worse. But that really shook my world that people wanna kill me and my people and rape us and do horrible things to children and to the elderly. And like, whoa, this is not just about oppression. This is not just about the way Palestinians are treated, which is not fair. This is a deeper problem. And I started to study that, and I don't have answers yet, but this really shook my world to meet, in a sense, evil people that are not into, we spoke earlier before this interview how most Israelis and most Palestinians, we just want to live peacefully. Well, the jihad point of view is not about peace. That's not what they're interested in. And I'm still, whoa, is that possible? Are there people like that out there? How do I hold them in my heart as well? But put a straight border on what's okay and what's not okay. And I feel like we're, as Israelis, we're very helpless on that. We cannot do much. If there's hope, the hope will come from moderate Muslims, I believe. They're the ones who will be able to control jihad to a degree. Jihad will not disappear completely, maybe ever, not in the near future. And we cannot do much other than protect ourselves. But I put my trust in moderate Muslim people and nations, and I'm hoping we can do peace with them and that they can control jihad because jihad is a problem for them as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were liberal and now you're post-liberal, and that post-liberal you're still trying to work out what that actually means for you. What was liberal like for you before? What were
Well,
your views pre?
loving people, loving humans, thinking that the problem in the world is about oppression, feeling like I'm a white man, privileged white man, so accepting my privileges and being thankful about them, and also seeing how they're hurting other people. And now I understand it's more complicated than that. I used to live in Berkeley for 7 years. My friends are, super liberal, woke, the woke movement. I was part of that. These are my people, and now it's like, oh my God, I've seen how they react to what's happened here, and it's so simplified. They really don't get the delicate of the situation. So yeah, I'm having a hard time with that, and I'm not sure what's after that. I'm a student of integral studies, Ken Wilber Integral Studies. I don't know if you heard about it. And he puts, it's a very quite complicated theory. I won't go too much into it, but he talks about post-liberalism as being an integral view that's able to take the best of liberalism, but also the best of how do I say that in English? People that are more religious and what's the word for that? Traditional.
Traditional, yeah.
So how to take the best from tradition and modernism and liberalism and post-liberalism. And we don't really know what that looks like. It's a good idea, but how do we really live this way? We're still working that out.
With differing values and differing political points of view and the increased polarization between what were traditionally we were, just for the sake of argument, left and right.
Right.
It's a very difficult world that we have inherited or we are now a
It-
part of and that our children are going to grow up into.
yeah,
It's a completely it's a different world.
Right, it's more complicated, but our ability to comprehend it is actually simplified because of all the, fast-paced information we get these days. What you're doing here is amazing, but we need way, way more projects like this. What you're doing here is trying to listen to the more complicated, delicate views and not just the simplified bad and evil. It's not really about bad and evil. It's about people and how we're impacted, and that's a lot to listen to. I hope people are gonna listen to this.
I sincerely hope so. It's interesting because I think as someone myself who enjoys history and has a big heart for looking back, it's almost in a sense, I don't like the word easy, but I'll use it for the sake of another word. It's easy for us to look back on history and we can draw a narrative here to say we're here because of X, Y, and Z, or alternatively, we're here or here or here. And that all depends on our overall view of the world as well. But one of the things, irrespective of even if one or all of those things are correct, is irrelevant because in so many ways, yes, we can't lose sight of trying to rectify past injustices wherever that may be. But at the same time, as you, as someone who's a therapist who works with emotions and how the suppression of emotions, the fear of emotions, you look back on the Jewish experience before October the 7th to the anti-Semitism in Europe, to a lot of the Mizrahim and Sephardim that were pushed out of Arab countries, the Holocaust and so on and so forth, but then also with Palestinians with Nakba
Right.
and the huge catastrophic emotional trauma that has placed. And as someone who comes from Northern Ireland, we've had our history of the Troubles.
Yeah.
And I've realized even in my own life that there are things that have come up in my own family life, in society, where it's like I realize I'm traumatized, even though I haven't personally experienced them. And one aspect of that within the Israeli-Palestinian context, from what I can see, is that yes, there's history, yes, there's experience, but there's also transgenerational trauma that has been
Yes.
passed down. And that's not something that can be swept up by a peace agreement, even if
Right.
you put things neatly into different boxes, as much as that's also important as well to pursue that. What do you think, Shachar, is missing from the global discussion at present, in your opinion?
But really, what you're doing here, what we're doing here together, listening more deeply and trying to understand the deeper truth, not just the easy truth. It's so easy to say, this is left, this is right, this is my narrative, this is not my narrative, just to listen to the edge of the opinion and say and think I know what this guy means. But the truth is way, way more complicated, and it takes time and deep listening and curiosity. It takes a lot of curiosity to really try and understand the human experience of each other.
Yeah.
I think that's what's missing the most.
Do you
That's the
think,
answer. That's the answer to polarization. Being curious about other people's experience.
yeah, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Though there is a lot of good groundwork going on with different
Yeah.
organizations, but they're often overshadowed by the events of October the 7th, of checkpoints in the West Bank, for example, settlements and different things like that. But
It's
it,
easier to listen to what the polarized opinion is saying, even though most people are not at the polarization edge of things. They're louder. The people at the edge, the opinions at the edge are louder. It's easier to grasp them. And listening to the more complicated opinions in the middle, it takes more patience and curiosity. It's harder.
yeah, in terms of that, what do you think needs to happen? Now, this is your personal opinion. Maybe you don't have an opinion in this, or maybe you haven't formulated it, but like in terms of how you as a society, as Israelis move forward, and you're not a Palestinian, so you can't really speak on behalf of them, but in sense, what needs to happen to introduce a sense of nuance and not complexity, but nuance and
Yeah, complex.
genuine curiosity?
I think we need to understand polarization, and we need to understand how it happens and what it does, and that the real world is not so polarized. And after we understand it, we'll try to find people will try to find more resources to sit down and listen, but they need to understand why it's so important. I just saw it's complicated to explain this, but there was this football game in Israel, which was very peaceful and heartfelt. They did a nice ceremony for hostages that came back, but there was also one person who did a very polarizing thing. I don't even remember what it was, and this is what came to the news. How this guy and maybe a few others were so evil to each other and did something disgusting to the hostages. But there was 30,000 other people there who were loving and touching, and that got way less news. So if we understand polarization and we understand that this is one person, maybe five people compared to 30,000, we can take our attention to the right place, to the more moderate, complex, delicate areas of life.
Yeah,
I hope.
I hope so too. Moving back to moving back to the question of your role as a therapist,
Yeah,
okay? Despite all of the pain, the suffering, the trauma, the emotions, the
yeah,
tears, etc., have
yeah,
there been moments of hope or connection that have surprised you?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the human psyche, the human consciousness is wow, is so unique. You know, on the one hand, we saw the most horrible things ever. We never imagined our lives will go to places like it went to through since the October 7th. On the other hand, there's so much human connection, so much human caring. I see men crying now. Not just crying, but expressing feelings and emotions so much more openly. Things have changed drastically. They're still being formalized. I'm not sure how they will change, but I'm a hopeful person, and I've been touched many, many times. Even by what you're doing. Why would a guy from Ireland do such a podcast? I'm really touched by that. You know, I still don't know how you found me. I mean, you told me how you found me, but it's still amazing that you found me and that you care about it so much that you put your time and effort into this. Wow, that's I'm touched by this.
I think that's the blessing of AI. I don't know, thinking back on the initial encounter, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know whether it's a blessing or a curse or it's both or it's a case of it's like this random Irish guy reaches out to you. It's like, okay, fine, so you found me, great. How did you find me? Chat GPT. And it's like, I don't know if that is an appreciation for where we've come from a technological level or whether that's, oh my goodness, no, do I feel comfortable with that or uncomfortable or different things like that. But it's interesting. I use it as a search engine, and it's like I'm looking for this. I'm curious to know this experience and story, and so I reached out, and you've got the ask of the question, and if it's a yes, great. If it's a no, that's no problem. That's okay, and you move on and you keep trying. But
So
it's
usually I'm a very positive guy, and I would say yes immediately. But because it was so weird and coming from Ireland, which in our view as Israelis, it's not pro-Israel. I'm not even sure what's the truth, but that's how we feel.
okay.
So I was suspicious, and it was interesting to me to see my suspicion. That's because of the war. I wasn't so suspicious before that.
Yeah.
And it took us a few, right? We had to message each other until I felt safe enough. And I felt really safe just now when I met you on Zoom and could feel your energy
Hmm.
and your human care.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. That's important to hear. That's my intention, and my intention is to reach out to both Israelis and Palestinians. And sometimes it doesn't work out
Yeah.
because people are fearful. They're angry. They don't agree with what you're doing. But I think for me, it's to try and to bring the conversation back from the extremes,
Yeah.
but at the same time to allow people to express their opinions and to say, listen, I obviously disagree or I agree or different things like that. So it's given that opportunity because in many ways it's an educational tool for people who listen
Yeah.
because they hear an opinion and then they go away and they think about it and they think, well, I still disagree with that. I think it's extreme on the Israeli side or this side or whatever. But that's interesting to hear that there are people who think about things like this through that particular lens. So it's trying to unpack that, hence Israel and Palestine Unpacked, to unpack that sense of complexity that does exist.
Yeah. Yes.
But just to finish off, just one last wee question.
Yeah.
Um, the idea of the experiences and the stories that you've heard being told to you, do you think that of those moments of hope and connection that have surprised you, do you think that any of them give you any hope for a peaceful future?
Um,
Or are we nowhere near that point?
wow, that's a delicate answer. Um, I'm optimistic, but it's more because I'm an optimistic kind of guy, not because of reality too much. I can see how there's a chance to big change in the Middle East. Big change with the moderate countries and nations making agreements and peace. And this could happen this year. It's right around the corner. There's a possibility it's just around the corner. The deeper piece will take decades because of all so much trauma, because of all so much pain and the suspicion and the fear. This will take really decades of good work that I'm not sure who would lead it. Me and my colleagues, I guess, but so I'm optimistic that there can be peace, agreement. And real peace will have to work on it. People will need to want it and to be part of processes that will facilitate it. It will take a long time. We live in a trauma environment. It takes decades to heal such deep trauma on both sides,
Yeah.
not just the Israelis. We're so much in the trauma, it's hard for us to grasp the other people's trauma. We're so hurt. It's hard to acknowledge other people's trauma, and peace will come only when we are able to acknowledge each other's pain, each other's perspectives. And this will take time. I can tell you here, Israelis are not ready for it yet. Even the most, I mean, the most, yes, but most people that were just so shaken, we're so scared, we're not ready yet. I hope it will happen sometime soon. But like you said, let's start with an agreement. That would be huge if there's an agreement, life-changing. And then we can work on that on the deeper level.
And that takes time
I'm patient.
and patience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate what you're doing, Pádraig.
As we wrap up today's episode, I want to express my deepest gratitude to our guest, Shachar Erez, for his openness and willingness to share his personal views, experiences, and rich stories. Looking ahead to our next episode, we'll be speaking with Khalil Sayed, a Palestinian Christian from Gaza, co-founder of the Agora Initiative, a former fellow at the Philos Project. He advocates for liberal democracy, interfaith dialogue, and mutual recognition between Palestinians and Israelis. He holds degrees from Bethlehem Bible College and the American University, and regularly contributes to international media. Until then, I would like to thank you for listening today. Don't forget to subscribe or follow us if you are interested in this content. And if you have any thoughts, feedback or questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach out via email at israelpalestineunpacked@gmail.com or connect with us through our Facebook page. All the contact details are listed in the description below.